Welcome to the J&J Show. I'm Jeff, he's Jerry, and tonight we are going to once again revisit our discussion on the imminent return of Jesus and the end of the age, I guess I should call it. I know the title of this series is End of Days, but technically it's not really the end of days, it's actually just the end of the age. And what brought this about for me, and I know Jerry, you've experienced some things that you wanted to talk about as well, but the main reason I wanted to talk about it is because God spoke directly to me about this, and it's uh, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing when God speaks to you, but when He starts speaking to you about, I don't want to say biblical matters, but I guess it kind of is, isn't it? uh, the return of Jesus. I usually don't go into full detail about what God says to me when He speaks to me, but with this one, He specifically told me to start spreading the word. So He, I guess I'll just start off with that, Jerry, unless you had
Yeah.
anything to,
Mm-mm.
he told me, he said, it's almost time to go home. Jesus is coming soon. It won't be long now. It's time to spread the word. And then the word soon echoed three times. And, usually when he speaks to me, it's more personal toward me. It's more of a, personal message, and it's not really something that this is the first time I believe, other than like my rapture dream or maybe my dream visitations, that I really felt the need to put it out there, what he said to me. And I know there's other videos out there where people are saying the same thing. They either see Jesus in a dream or God speaks to them, and they have dreams actually, and not rapture dreams. I may mention that later in this episode, but I do remember one specific dream where somebody saw Jesus and there was a bunch of sheep in a valley, and most or some of them turned and started running toward Jesus, but a lot of them were in the dark, signifying the lost.
Hmm.
And he told the person having the dream that he'd be coming soon. And man, this one really struck a chord with me, Jerry. It was really something else, and like I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, the world's gonna end tomorrow. I need to, it didn't like induce a panic in me. Honestly, anytime I think about Jesus coming, it doesn't make me panic at all. It's very, very reassuring.
Yep.
And but the fact that I got the feeling that now's the time, he told me to spread the word, which means I need to try to save as many lost as possible. And that part of it, because to know how close we are to the end and to know how many lost people are out there, and you want to try to save them all, but I mean, that's not possible, unfortunately. And to know that the end is that close or this close, and for God to tell you to spread the word, you would think if it was going to happen like in a week or a month, you'd feel a little more panicked about trying to get that word out and trying to save as many people as possible. But at the same time, I got the feeling that there's still time. So there's no panic, there's no rush, but at the same time, it's imminent, and we do need to get the word out, and we do need to try to save as many lost as possible. So on one hand, he told me, or I got the feeling as he was saying that, or right after he said that, I got the feeling that, there's still time. But on the other hand, it's like Jesus is coming soon, and we need to try to get the word out and save as many people as possible.
Yeah. When I got your text about that, it was like a thunderclap. It was. I had several things that very day that happened. That one of them was the first couple verses in Joel chapter 3. Seems to indicate that the Lord said that the end times would come during the generation that sees Israel reborn. And so I had heard of Jimmy Evans, who I respect as a preacher, mention that. And when he did, it was just like again, like a thunderclap, and I was like, "How have I never noticed that? But what is this verse?" I mean, so I went and I pulled up and was reading it, and, it can be taken that way for sure, and it probably means that. Um, it's not 100% clear, even though, at the face value, it seems like that is what, the verse is saying. But the historian in me, and I won't say skeptic 'cause I'm not a skeptic, but I like to try to look at a verse and see, okay, is there any other way that this could be? I spent the whole day praying about that, and right when I was in the middle of that, your text came through, and I tell you, I don't know. I've had several people recently telling me and saying that there's still more time, but I don't know if there is or not. With the communications the way it is today, and with the fact of how you can get a message out basically instantaneously, it's not like it back in the day when it would take years to get a message out. Um, I really feel like when you look at all the stuff that has happened just since the last time we filmed an episode, it's unbelievable. I mean, the last time we sat down here to film, if someone had told us, Jeff, that there would be a major, for lack of a better term, UFO flap, and then there would be a major fire to break out in a major US city, I don't know if, I mean, you obviously we would have believed it, but and that's not even including the terrorist attacks that occurred. The fact that the Empire State Building, the Capitol Building, and the Washington Monument were all struck by lightning on New Year's Eve at the same time, practically. And they say that the new World Trade Center was also struck. I heard that wasn't confirmed, but the other three were definitely struck by lightning on New Year's Eve. Very unusual. Um, it's from what I'm seeing, for me, it's definitely important to get the word out because for the first time ever, I really feel like that we're on borrowed time. And for the first time ever, I feel like this is the year that it's probably going to go down. And I think that I was texting somebody just this morning or last night actually, um, about disclosure. And the fact of the matter is, I mean, I was going to bring up so we could, the biggest thing probably that has happened since we last filmed is the 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 events in the sky, which has had everybody talking. I mean, the whole world was talking about these UAPs, as they call them, but they're unidentified flying objects, orbs, um, um, drones is what the mostly we talked about, and it's a huge subject. And I'm glad we didn't do a episode on it right away because everybody was. And really, I think it kind of was better to wait a while, like we've done, to kind of look and see, what's going to occur, how is this going to play out. And as it turns out, it's still going on. It hasn't gone away. It wasn't just a one-time thing and then and stopped like so many other things. It's still going on as we film this. So there's so much now that I mean when we talked about doing another episode, which we hadn't done in a while. This required zero prep because there's so much to say. There's plenty to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I've even seen here in North Carolina, out near my parents' house. They live out in the county, out in the country, as they say. Red and green flashing lights in
Yeah.
the night sky,
Yep.
and I've seen two of them about three times now out there.
Yeah.
Not really that close, but not too far away. And then one night we saw one flying across the sky, and it came kind of close to their house, but it was still way up there, and it was still, you probably can't tell, it's probably miles and miles away, but it is pretty unnerving, I guess. It's kind of weird looking up and seeing stationary lights in the sky blinking green or red, and it's definitely not airplanes. We
Exactly.
actually one night we saw a plane flying through the sky the same night we saw these things, and you can definitely tell an airplane, and these things it's pretty crazy, but I thought the same thing you did. Just another sign in the sky. There'll be signs amongst the moon and the stars, right? Isn't that how it
Sure.
goes?
He says that he will grant wonders in the sky above. We never really knew exactly what that meant. Um, but yeah, the same thing. We a year ago, um, my family and I were watching these things and commenting on them because we would see these red and green lights hovering, and they would stay in the same spot for the longest time. And then on a different night, they might be in the same area, and then on another night, they'd be somewhere else completely. But we never followed them. We never drove off and tried to find, where is this thing hovering or anything, because this was a year ago. No one was talking about it, but we noticed, what are these things? Why are they over a small town in Virginia? I didn't hear anything out of them, but then again, they were far enough away to where I wouldn't have heard anything anyway. So it's entirely possible that it could have been a drone. And I'm not saying that some of these things that aren't being seen aren't drones. I think this subject is very large, and anybody who tries to come at it and say that all of these things that are being seen are X, and somebody else says no, all of them are Y, I think both those individuals are going to be wrong, because I don't think all of them can be explained away with one explanation. There seems to be a variety of things but clearly some of these things are not drones. You can look, anyone who has followed the UFO phenomenon, which, like I've said on here before, it has not been a big thing for me. I've loosely followed it. I think some of the history of the UFO phenomenon is what's interesting more than, what's the latest sightings. But all you have to do, if you've even casually observed the UFO documentaries, you've seen close-ups of these orbs in the sky taken from the 1980s, and they look just like what's being filmed now. It's a ball of light that changes shape, that it seems to expand out into a whole bunch of different points of light and then condense back into a solid ball and do this over and over. It's not, there's no way on earth that it's a drone, period. Not possible. Sorry, not buying that. But some of them, I do believe, may very well be drones. But even if it is a drone, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's perfectly normal or can easily be explained away. I don't think we want to spend our time tonight rehashing this phenomenon because everybody's heard a lot about it. But just the fact that it's going on, it's spreading. It hasn't stopped, and I don't. I think that what it. I think what's important about it is, does it bring us that much closer to disclosure? Because the this phenomenon isn't happening in a vacuum. We have to remember that what's going on in Washington D.C. and has been for years are these hearings in which we have, you know, PhDs in physics, we have former Pentagon officials, we have gentlemen who have been in charge of secret programs in the government that are all blowing the whistle. Some of them claim they're being threatened. They're all blowing the whistle about what has been going on behind closed doors. And so there's a tremendous amount of secrecy that's going, and always has been, but even now. So on the one hand, we have secrecy, but on the other hand, we have hearings going on in plain sight, and then kind of connecting the two, we have all these sightings going on all over everywhere. And so it's you really, it's kind of it kind of takes you aback.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially you're I don't know how they can like, oh no, don't worry about it. It's just drones. And then they're having hearings where they're releasing classified information and they're confirming that some of these videos that are out there are real. Just like the Tic Tac video
Right.
that's been released and confirmed by our government that it was a UAP and they don't know exactly what it was.
Right.
And for those of you who may not know, there's a video out there called the Tic Tac video, and there's a gentleman who is in the Navy, I believe, right, Jerry? We
Yeah.
talked about it
Fravor.
one episode. Yep, him
Yep.
out in I think it was off the coast of California. It was in
Yep.
San Diego. They were doing drills. They were trying to do a simulate aerial combat, and then this thing popped up on the radar, and they tried to catch up to it and catch it with their weapon system, try to lock onto it, and they couldn't because it was going so fast. And when they finally did, you can just hear the excitement in the pilot's voice when he actually did. So that amongst many others have been released, and the government has declassified the information about them and said, yeah, these are UAPs. We don't know exactly what they are, and pretty much just confirming, what used to be called UFOs are now called UAPs are actually out there.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's been just this week, people have been filming the smoke and the fires in California, and these things have flown right across the screen, right in the can, and you know it's not an airplane, it's not a jet. You can see the thing go right on across at supersonic speed. What on earth is going? I mean, it's just, and I tell you, the reason we could go on like this, all night long. Um, but the bottom line is, for anybody who's listening, what are we saying? I think it comes back to what the Lord said in the Olivet discourse, is that he said in the latter days there will be great upheaval amongst the nations, and he said you will have signs and sun and moon and stars, and we've had that in 2017. We've had before that in 2013 we had the blood moons. 2017 we had both the Revelation 12 sign occurred, which was unreal. We had the Great American um, eclipse, um, sun and moon and stars. We've also had, and on earth, fear among nations at the raging of the sea and the waves. And the Bible makes it pretty clear when it talks about the rate, because we've talked about on here before, raging of the sea and the waves. Is that talking about tidal waves or tsunamis? But the Bible often, when it talks about that in prophecy, is talking about people and fear among nations at the raging of the sea and the waves. What have we had in which the entire world has been affected? Well, World War II affected a lot of people, but it certainly didn't affect the entire world. Folks, in Central South America weren't affected by World War II. Folks in Siberia weren't really affected by World War II. So, the Cold War was, again, it didn't affect everybody, but we have had something just in the past 4 years that affected the entire globe, had the whole globe in a panic, not knowing what to do, consternation, fear, and that was the late sickness that I guess if we mention it, supposedly you get banned or something. So I won't say it, but everyone knows what happened in 2020. And then what's the last thing the Lord said after that? And then there will be signs. There'll be a war in heaven. And so the next thing we should expect to see would be something in the sky. When you see these things happening, the Lord says, look up, for your redemption draws near. And so the very next thing we should have expected after all these things have been transpiring since basically 2013, but certainly since 2017, and this is nothing new. We've been saying this on this channel for a couple of years now. The only thing that's happening is what we've been saying is actually being, you know, brought to fruition. It's actually occurring. Not because we're so smart, we're just because we're following Bible prophecy, which in itself is smart to do. And so we would expect, it only made sense that the next thing was going to be something to do with the sky and the stars. And what has happened? Exactly that. It's unbelievable. I mean, you know, it what like you said before, is when I see these things, you can't hardly describe the excitement because you know what's coming. And for me personally, I just don't think, when the Lord first spoke to me about this in 2020, in September of 2020, I felt inside like it was going to be 3 to 5 years. That was just over 4 years ago, 4 years and several months. And at this point, 4 years down the road, I feel like that's still on. I feel like that if the Lord doesn't come back this year, and I'm not setting dates, and people don't need to freak out. Um, but if he doesn't come back this year, I do believe that if nothing else, we will see something major to set the stage for his return in the following year. And what I mean by major is something like disclosure. Uh, I don't know if that will occur, uh, if if that'll happen before the church is taken. I really don't know. It could. It doesn't really say, but certainly there'll be a lot of deception. And I tell you, I just don't think that the government claims, insiders claim that the government doesn't release this information because the public can't handle it. And to be honest, I think that's probably true. I don't know if society that really is its main focus is the NFL. I'm not sure if they really could handle these things coming down and show. We've said that for how long, Jeff? Imagine if tomorrow morning on the Today Show they're interviewing some being. It could be very well. Maybe it's not an alien-looking thing. Maybe it's a 7 foot tall, blonde, Nordic-looking fallen angel. But whatever the case, it's going to turn things upside down, and we're that close to it happening. That close.
I fully believe that. Now, when you say disclosure, I'm sure that question is going to come up. What exactly do you mean?
Either the government admitting, yes, that these beings do exist, because so far they've only admitted that there are things in the sky that they're not aware of what they are. They made a big deal of admitting that, and then they walked it back. Last year they came back and said, "Well, we've never said anything like that." Well, yeah, you did. We all heard it, but the government specializes in telling us what we haven't heard and denying the obvious. Like we said in here before, NASA actually stands for never a straight answer, and I think that's pretty accurate. But even NASA now has come out and it admitted, they came out recently and admitted that they had found some evidence of something on Mars or whatnot, which for NASA was amazing because they're usually always strictly to the line of everything's perfectly normal up there. We haven't ever seen anything out of the norm. And so disclosure is going to be either, like we said, um, these things being visible in some way, shape, or form, or the government coming out and admitting that yes, these things do exist. Now, it may be that the government admits something like that, and then these beings, and again, like we said here before, we don't believe in aliens from Uranus or some foreign planet. We believe that these things are a mixture of fallen angels and demonic entities and probably some stuff that's in between that. Demons are not alien. I mean, demons are not fallen angels, and fallen angels are not demons. They're very distinct. But like we've said also on here, the enemy camp is very diverse. It's not just demons and fallen angels. I think, like we've said, C.S. Lewis. I think he got it very right in his books when he portrayed the enemy army as being filled with all kinds of different looking beings, and he also portrayed Aslan, the good guys' army, as also being, and we can tell from the Bible that's probably the case there too. It's not just angels up there. There's all kinds of different beings that the Lord. So anyhow, I think that's what disclosure is going to look like: is a confession by the government. Yes, these are out there, or some sort of clear visual that will convince everybody that the jig is up.
Got you. Yeah, and I guess their hands pretty soon are going to be tied, and they're going to be forced because with more and more things happening, that they're going to have no other choice left than to just come clean or come as clean as the government can. But yeah, it's not to mention we've been talking a lot about the signs in the skies and looking up, but there's been phenomenons happening like an uptick in cryptid sightings,
Yeah.
an
Yep.
uptick in my favorite topic to mention, and I'll mention it here: rapture dreams.
Yeah.
People having visions, near death experiences where people go to heaven and hell and describe it, and they come back on a full blown, full out mission to spread the word and save as many people as possible. That I wish I had half the determination that these people have when they die and see hell and they're saved from it. And I've mentioned before on here that I've actually felt what the people there describe feeling when they go there, and it's awful. And you mentioned all the different types of beings in God's army. There's different types of angels. Just look at all the different types of angels that are described in the Bible. And I know now the new craze is to say that the um, angels in Ezekiel are what real angels look like, but that's just one form. There's
Right.
people, or there's different types of angels out there, and just man, everything that's been happening in the last, I mean, you can go back 10 years, but it's just in the last 4, ever since 2020 and
Yeah.
that pandemic that you mentioned, that we shall not, yeah, the name we shall not say, that um I just I was thinking about it the other day when I was thinking about what God had spoken to me, and when I was thinking about doing this episode, and it's just never thought I'd see it. Never thought I'd be here for it, but I'm just like super excited that I am here for it. And man, to see Jesus ride through those clouds is going to be amazing. Can't wait to hear that trumpet. I just kind of anticipate it some days. I'm just sitting here anticipating it, but to be able to see him ride through the clouds is it's going to be something else. And just now, just with God speaking to me and telling me that Jesus is coming and it's almost time to go home. And at first, he said it's almost time to go home, and I was like, just me. I got the feeling like,
Yeah.
you calling me home, and then the second part of that came through with Jesus is coming soon. And I'm like, okay, now I get it. Not just me, everybody.
Yeah.
It's almost time to go home, and soon. That's the word. Soon is the. I just kept over and over after that message 3 times actually, and you know how God is with His numbers,
Yeah.
and I don't think me hearing it 3 times was a mistake, but it's time to get right with the Lord if you haven't already, and it's time, if you're a Christian, start spreading the word. We need to get the word out, and we need to try to save as many lost people as possible because time's running short.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, look at it's the birth pangs is the term that the Lord uses. Now, we don't know when the birth pangs began. Like so many things with prophecy in the end times, it depends on how far back you get. Like with a camera, how much you capture in your shot depends upon how close you are to what you're shooting. And it's the same thing. We don't know if the birth pangs started around 1900. And some folks, that's ridiculous. Well, it's not ridiculous. There's a lot of reason to think that the birth pangs began in around 1900 or somewhere thereabouts, or the birth pangs started in 2020. We don't know for sure. But one thing we do know, the events are coming closer and closer together, regardless of when they started. We do know for a fact that events now are coming almost one on top of the other. I mean, we actually had some little breaks back in 2020 and 2021. There were some little pauses and breaks, but now it's just one on top of the. I mean, we don't know what's next. What's going to be the next thing that occurs. Um, it's about time for the wars to start up again. I think we're going to have some more wars going. I mean, we got all this stuff going on at the same time. It's nuts. I mean, look at the leaders that are stepping down now, that are being impeached and stepping down. It's crazy. I mean, like you said, the cryptid stuff, and that's always going on, as are the rapture dreams. That stuff never stops. It just continues on. And when you're monitoring this as a Christian and you're listening to other Christians, you hear them say things that have to be true because you've been getting the same thing from the Lord. And that's been happening basically from 2017 to the current time, where Christians have been getting the same message from the Lord independently, and they didn't even know it until they began sharing. That's happened with me and several other folks, and that's going on, and it's further confirmation that we are at that point, that the birth pangs now are coming one on top of the other, and there isn't going to be a big letting up, and a big pause. That doesn't happen. Jesus said this will be just like a delivery of a birth of a baby. And there is no point in there where all of a sudden, oh, we're just going to take a big break, and for several hours, nothing's going to happen. Once the birth pangs begin, they continue. And it's going to be the same here. We're not going to have a big pause where all of a sudden there's a year where nothing happens. It's go and it's just the Lord said, when you see these things happening, look up, for your redemption draweth near. It's what He said, and it's what He's telling us now, and it's what's happening. And like we've said on here before, I can't imagine anything worse than that day coming, because the day is going to come. It's the day of the Lord, the rapture. I know that I don't want to upset anybody, but people think that it's just gonna be all of a sudden Jeff and I are filming and then we're gone, and that all these people are gonna be driving buses and then they'll be gone. That's not the way the Bible describes it. The day of the Lord is gonna be a dramatic day. The sun will be darkened, the moon will turn to blood, there's gonna be a huge earthquake. People are gonna their hearts are gonna be failing them for fear of what they see happening, and in the midst of all this is when the Christians are taken. So it's there's gonna be a tremendous amount of confusion, and for that day to occur, and then for you to realize that night or the next morning that the Lord had, because the Revelation says that the people will say, woe is us, for the great day of the Lord has come, and who is able to stand? So it actually says that the people on earth will know what has happened, that the day of the Lord, the wrath of the Lamb has come. And I just can't imagine anything worse than being aware that you're stuck here now, and that it's going to all get much worse and there's no getting out. I mean, now is the time to make sure that when the Lord comes back, that He knows you, that He won't say, I never knew you, or that he knows your voice, or that you know His voice. Now's the time to draw as near to the Lord as you can. I'm not talking about going out and starting your own church. I'm not talking about becoming a missionary. I'm talking about praying to the Lord, reading your Bible, praying to the Lord, reading the Bible. Don't let weeks go by without doing either or. That's not good. I'm not saying you have to earn your salvation, but I am saying it's not a good policy to ignore the Lord prior to His return. You're playing with fire, because He makes clear in Revelation that those who have been ignoring Him are going to have to go through this time of testing. You do not want to go through this time of testing. You just don't.
Exactly. It's like I just mentioned, I've felt the hopelessness and the fear and the emptiness, the hollowness that people are going to feel in hell, and I'm sure they're going to feel much the same during the tribulation.
Yeah.
And it is no laughing matter. You can take my word on that one. It is nothing I'd wish on my worst enemy. Um, it's just awful. But you mentioned 1900. Um, the birth pangs may have started around that point, and people might scoff at that, but soon for us doesn't is not the same as soon for the Lord. So 100 years from 1900 to now, or 120, that's 5 years now. That's nothing. That's just a breath of the Lord. I mean, maybe not even that, maybe an eye blink, but birth pangs. You think about a woman having a baby. She starts to have those what are they called? Um,
Contractions.
there you go. I'm not a father myself, so yeah. But probably not. I'm probably not the best candidate to do this analogy, but yeah, just cor- correct me along the way if I get something wrong here. But she starts to have those contractions, right? And they may be far apart to start with, and then they get closer and
Right.
closer. The closer to the birth, the closer they come. And if you think about the 19th, not the 19th century, the 20th century. We're in the 21st century now, right? It's the
Yep.
20th century from 1900 to 2000.
Yep.
We've talked about an episode of all the things, all the signs that have happened,
Yep.
wars, famines, Israel becoming a nation again in 1948. Um, I'm sure I'm forgetting a bunch of other things that have happened along the way. Did
The
you have one last?
martyrs, the
Yeah.
Christians being killed.
Yep. Oh, yeah. That's a huge one. Yeah. And that just keeps ramping up too.
Yep.
So um, all of these things, these birth pangs have been happening right around that time, and they're just ever since, like you said, 2020, it's one thing right after another, on top of each other. One thing barely has time to pass before another thing's happening. And I'm sure something's out there happening right now as we're
Yep.
recording this or as it's being somebody's watching it on YouTube. There's probably something else happening out there. And it's just I 2020 really kicked off something, I believe. And because if you look back to when the pandemic happened, it's just been one thing after another
Yeah.
nonstop, and all that points to me is that the time is near. God just confirmed it to me on, December 30th when he said that to me, and, it just confirmed to me that it's almost time to go home. Pretty much
Well,
exactly what he said to me.
look at what look the Lord said that as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. So what happened in the days of Noah? The Lord gave mankind how long before he unleashed his wrath? 120 years. The Lord told Noah the man's time will be 120 years. That's how much time passed before the Lord brought about his deliverance. If the birth pangs began in 1900, what would 2020 be? 120 years that had passed before the Lord began to unleash us. So it's not really an important thing to get all worked up about or whatnot, but that's one reason why I lean towards that. That you look at the 20th century, that it was throughout that century, like you just said, wars like you wouldn't believe. I mean, just like the world had never seen before. Famines, earthquakes, more Christians died in that century than had ever been killed in all the other centuries put together.
I
Uh,
forgot about that and the earthquakes.
sure, and I'm one that people can get upset, but I tend to believe that the tribulation as a term began with the fall of Rome and the sacking of Rome of Jerusalem in 70 A.D. And I believe that the tribulation as such that Jesus talked about that we will go through has been going on since the early church. There will be a 7-year period that's coming up that everyone refers to as the tribulation. The Bible doesn't do that. That's a human term. The Bible talks about a 7-year period. It doesn't say tribulation. And we've said this on here many times before. Inside that 7-year period is a 3.5-year period the Bible describes as being particularly awful. That's a 3.5-year period that will be awful beyond belief. But if you look at how the Bible, like when John starts out and tells in Revelation, tells the fellow church that I am your brother and participating in the tribulation. He talks about it as a present tense, the tribulation that is occurring. There are many other things that suggest that the tribulation has been going on all this time. And that's why when this age comes to an end, when the last Gentile has gotten saved, and Paul tells us that there's a specific number, and when the last person is saved, this age will come to an end. And that's why Jesus says, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light. And people get really tripped up on that. How come the Lord says immediately after? If the tribulation is coming, that's because the tribulation began with the early church and it's been going on for centuries and centuries and centuries. Oh, that's ridiculous. That's not possible. The world hasn't been going through tribulation. Oh, really? I mean, if you stop and think about the Vikings and what they unleashed on people and how awful the world has been, the horror that has with plagues and all kinds of diseases, the world has been a very bitter place to live. The only light there's been has been from the gospel. The world has certainly undergone tribulation since Jesus went up into the clouds after his resurrection. No doubt about it. We've just gotten immune to it, is what it is. And our idea of tribulation now has been elevated so much because of all the awful things. But in the 20th century, we saw it begin to ramp up more and more and more. And then we also saw the birth of Israel, like you said, which is absolutely critical. You can't take that away as far as being. And then right along with that, that's when this whole UFO phenomenon began. The very next year, Israel's born 1948. Right at that time is when the whole UFO phenomenon exploded. And there have been UFOs seen before, but not like what occurred from then on out.
Absolutely not, and, I know we've already said it, and I'll say it again. It's time to get right with the Lord. If you're not saved, it's time to get saved, and if you are saved, it's time to start spreading the word and try to reach as many lost as possible. But yeah, when you talk about that day and what's going to happen that day, just gave me goosebumps, and I got excited. I can't help but smile and get excited. I know it's going to be terrible for some people, but I can't help but be excited
Right.
to
Exactly.
be reunited. Well, I say reunited with Jesus. I mean, I've never actually met him physically in person, but he's with me. But it's going to be nice to actually meet him face to face and to caught up into the sky to meet him and to go home. Just to go home. It's going to be beyond words. I can't even describe my excitement at that. So
And the Bible makes such emphasis on warning us to be ready for that day. That day is going to come, and it's going to be a terrible day. I mean, terrible in terms of dramatic. And we need to be prepared for that day to happen at any time, because there's numerous verses that Jeff and I have highlighted on here before that I've never seen anybody highlight together that talk about shrinking away from the Lord at his appearing. You don't want to be caught by surprise. And Jesus himself said, pay attention, watch, remember Lot's wife. And that's he emphasized that. What did Lot's wife do? She turned back. She wanted the world, she wanted to stay with Sodom and Gomorrah, and she died as a result of it. There's a lot of Christians who are scoffing and laughing when a lot of people have said, and I agree with this, that when Paul and Peter talks about scoffers in the last days, we always read that and assumed that was going to be the lost. We didn't realize actually, no, the scoffers are mostly fellow believers. I know more people who are lost who are like, "What's going on? Something's not right here." And a lot of times it's the Christian. Oh no, everything's fine. We're just going through a little rough patch. This isn't just a little rough patch, folks. Not at all.
nope, not even close. And um, I just can't really put into words how I don't want to like try to incite panic in people, but at the same time, you need that sense of urgency
Oh yeah.
to get moving. And oh, I remember what I was going to say. The last thing I want to say about this tonight is that you know, we've been talking about this for a couple of years now, and you can dismiss us and you can say that we don't know what we're talking about, and we're just a couple of crazy people holding up the end is nigh signs. But the Bible does say that we won't know the day and the time, but we will know the
Season.
the season. That's the word. Yeah, the season. We will know the season, and I've said it on here before, and I'll say it again. If this is not the season, I can't imagine what would be.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing I have to say. I'll let you
Yeah.
if you
I
have
mean,
anything else to add.
this is what we thought the end times would look like. That's what's so convincing to me. This is what I thought the end times would look like. Massive corruption, wars everywhere, unbelievable storms and floods, fire everywhere you can imagine. With the fires aren't new. Things have been burning. Remember a couple years ago, a lot of Australia burned. The fire has been going on in many places, and where there hasn't been fire, there's been floods. And so I would say at this point, a person would be better off panicking than they would being complacent or ignoring this. Panic's not usually something that you want to use as a policy, but I think people who panic are better off than people who just blow it off, because somebody who's panicking at least is going to take some sort of action. Maybe they'll get desperate and call on the name of the Lord, because that's all it requires now. I mean, you'll notice a lot of Christians are not panicking about all this stuff. As a matter of fact, when I see it, I get excited. Not that I want to see people go through terrible times, because I don't. But when I see these things taking place, when I see the consternation that the government has and that the media has, I'm not consternated. I get happy, because I know that on that day, when you've ever seen the World Series or you've seen the Stanley Cup, when the players win, their reaction when they just go completely nuts. I know for a fact that's going to be me. I've never won a championship and never had that experience. But when the trumpet sounds and the Lord appears, That's gonna be me. There's not gonna be any debating, "Oh, what about my house and stuff?" It's just like they throw their gloves, they throw their sticks, they throw their helmets off, and they're just in wild excitement to run to what has happened. That's the way I'm gonna be. It's just gonna be wild excitement, and, I can't,
Exactly.
you know,
Yep.
I can't wait. I really can't wait. It's what I look forward to. It's what I think about all the time.
Yeah. Me too. I'm gonna be running outside, looking up, waiting. I I want to see Jesus ride through those clouds. That's gonna be
Yeah,
amazing. But yeah, you said it. I guess one reason I'm not panicking, one reason I don't have I have a sense of urgency, but at the same time, it's like I'm relaxed about it. It's like, bring it
yeah,
on. I'm ready.
yeah,
And I guess because I do read the Bible, I do talk to the Lord. I
yeah,
am very close with him. He speaks to me and I can see it just like you. This is the season. It's got to be. If it's not, then I don't know what is. So,
yeah.
uh,
What do we think it's gonna look like? Well, it's gonna look
exactly.
like this.
Right. Exactly. But if you didn't have anything else to add, I
Mm-mm.
can go ahead and close this out.
Sure.
I won't rehash what we've already said, just that it's time to get right with the Lord and it's time to spread the word. God said that to me on December 30th of 2024, and it's we're recording this on January 13th, and the feeling that I had when he said that to me has not gone away. Every time I think about it, it just comes rushing right back, and um, I need to spread the word. If you're a Christian, you need to spread the word. If you're lost, you need to get right with Jesus, and it's one simple choice. And this honestly, you can fight it all you want to. You've probably been fighting it your whole life. You don't want to believe. You think it's crazy. You think we all worship a giant sky genie or whatever else you want to say about it. Whatever else you want to say about the Bible, you can fight it as much as you want to. But when you look deep down and you have that empty hole inside you, only God can fill that hole.
Yeah,
And once you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you'll wonder why you went so long without it and why you went so long before you ultimately decided to take that step. And once you
right,
take that step, you're not going to be shamed. You're not going to be judged. You're not going to be ridiculed. You're going to be welcomed with open arms. I've talked about when God called me back into the fold. It was actually in 2020, Jerry, at the when we were on
mhm,
vacation. He called me back into the fold. I was living a life of sin. I hadn't completely turned my back on the Lord. I was still a Christian, but a Christian in name only. And he welcomed me back with open arms. And it's been nothing but a pure celebration for the last 4.5 years since that happened. And it'll be the same for you. All you got to do is take that one step, and you'll start talking to the Lord, start praying, start reading your Bible, and then you'll start seeing the signs too, and you'll get excited about the return of Jesus as well. And that's really all I got to say about that. Thanks for watching. Um, we have, I think this is part 9 in this series, maybe part 10, but we've covered it. We've covered it extensively. If you want to go back and watch those episodes and see what we've talked about, we got a lot of other videos on our channel, so check those out too. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. God bless.